Well, hello. I thought I would try out YouTube Live, and I had a couple of things on my mind. By way of a quick explanation, I'm going to talk about being a Mormon here. Lord knows how many people see this. I'm going to probably violate my own standards of doing things really quickly, but I'll still try to be quick. So, I was born in the church to members of the church. My family goes back to the mid 1840s in the church. We're not descendants of any named people. I don't think hardly anybody ever went on a mission in my direct lineage. My brother did, but I don't know of any others. My mom was a convert, and yeah, I grew up in it. I had a lot of questions when I was a kid, and I would ask these questions. I had issues with things that, interestingly, over the years, it turned out the church didn't take a stand on, like, well, a particular stand. I'll talk about it in a second, like evolution, 6,000-year-old Earth, some other things like that. And I had problems with that because I believed that those were things that we believe, but I didn't see how they could be true given the proof of dinosaurs. I was very into paleontology as a child, and I've been into astronomy, and I wanted to be an astronaut. So I mostly left the church for about 25 years, and I was not hostile. I just, like all churches, there's people, and I didn't like the people that I had been dealing with, and I didn't like a number of other things. So, I went to just about every church you can name, and so I've spent a lot of time in different faiths. And 10 years ago, or 11 years ago, I got back into church, and 10 years ago, I got endowed. And it was just before my 50th birthday, actually. Like 10 years exactly within a few days here. Um, and that was quite an amazing experience. And it wasn't something I had ever aspired to when I was younger. So that was a good decision for me at the time and what was happening in my life, and it continues to be. I had to make a choice, a difficult choice in my life. I was going through a divorce, and so that was, I hadn't filed for divorce, but we were having issues. Been together 25 years, and she was kind of hostile to Mormons. But I started going back to church, and I was drinking a lot, and we filed for divorce, and I had to decide what I wanted to do after a bender. And I got on my knees and I prayed to God, and I chose a path of righteousness, if you will. And I stopped the next day. And that was it. I haven't touched anything in, I don't know, what is it, almost 11 years. And so that was a big deal. Then 8 years ago, I had a widow make a heart attack and I died. So I was dead for a bit, a few minutes or so. And interesting experience, uh, faith affirming for me. Um, so I I start this because I spent a lot of time looking at what anti-Mormons were doing and the way they would infiltrate. And I've ran across some of their training materials. I knew some people that did it, where they teach evangelicals to go to Mormon events and to misrepresent themselves as former members and to lead people away from the church. They actually have training seminars and scenario setups where they teach you how to use social media and how to proselytize to Mormons. I'm not sure why they care so much. Like, if Mormons are completely wrong, the worst thing that we did was help, right? And try to live good lives and help other people. So I'm not sure why these evangelicals are so obsessed with us. And so I I bring this up. There's this whole ex Mormons for Jesus, and like none of these people were ever Mormon. And there's this dude, I don't know, last 10 years he's been on my nerves, Dave Bartosowitz, and he's tried to turn it into a grift. And I mean, at most, he gets a few hundred views, but the guy makes all these claims. He was never, you could tell by the way he makes the claims, he was never a member of the church. And he claims he was. And I see a lot of other people who, especially during the pandemic, there's people who left and they're like, oh, the church this or that. And the problem is, they actually don't understand the church. Like, I don't know if they didn't listen, they weren't curious, but the things that people talk about are almost entirely wrong. So now there's this Pastor Jeff with his Hello Saints series. And initially I found him interesting. He seemed earnest, and maybe he is, but um, he says he wants to understand Latter-day Saints, and he spends a fair amount of time, and he's grown quite a following. I'm sure he's actually making some good money doing it now. So it calls into question some of the motivations. But what I've started to really wonder is this, it seems he's trying, because there's an arrogance to what he does. He will not entertain the notion that anything that he believes that's in conflict with what Mormons believe, he might be wrong. So that's where the arrogance comes in. So it seems he's trying to establish for himself exactly what Mormons believe, so that when he refutes it, he's refuting the right thing, so that he can be the best anti-Mormon he can be. So the things that he says are correct or close to correct, so that he can get into this wiggle room and make members of the church question their faith. And a lot of what he's doing falls in line. It's a very long game. He's been doing it for 15, 18 months now. It falls in line with a lot of the training that I saw that anti-Mormons had for infiltrating and slowly leading people away. And this is my belief in what he is doing. He seems to be earnest, but I believe that is his goal. And I'm going to keep an eye on what he's doing. And he suddenly got much less responsive than he was early on when I, shared some materials with him, which he never took advantage of. But for somebody who wants to be educated. So a couple of things about that I learned about our church later in life that made me feel so much better about it. The things that I had questioned is how science friendly we are. So 6,000-year-old Earth, we don't take a stand on it. Dinosaurs, sure. What were some of the others? Oh gosh. Life on other planets? Sure. Ex nihilo creation. This is my problem with a lot of evangelical Christianity, is the belief that God snapped everything into existence. Therefore, there's a beginning, but there is no end. And if God created everything, then God created evil. So how did God create evil if he's infinitely good? And this Pastor Jeff fellow, he runs into this all the time, where he doesn't see the conflict in his own belief systems. So if you stop and think about it, like I say, I question my belief systems all the time, because I want to strengthen what I believe, or I want to change my belief to be correct, or as correct as I can be. I don't want to believe the wrong things. So I will listen to just about anything, and I will poke and prod at it to understand it. I try to just not, unless I've already done the investigation, then I'll dismiss something out of hand, because I've done the work already. So, um, yeah, we're okay with all sorts of things like that. And, something I don't see a lot of Christians talk about is, yeah, the earth can easily be, billion, whatever years old. But we also don't know how long Adam and Eve were in the garden. And that could have been for a very long time. And Mormons believe that the fall had to happen so that we might be, because they never would have procreated. And evangelicals see it as the worst thing that could ever be. Um, and the idea that God creates evil, that there's a fine line where you're going to go to hell and burn forever, that doesn't seem like a merciful God to me. That's why the version of heaven that Mormons have, I find much more logical and interesting. Like, this was one of the things I ran into. My dad and I talked before he died. Like, I my fear of death is being bored. If, like, all the things that I do and all the things that interest me, I can't do when I'm dead. I like to write music. I like to do technology. That's where I work. I wish I could have had a longer conversation with my dad after he died, which was, when did he die? A year, little less than a year after I died. So, and then my sister died. Anyway, a lot of us have died. I'm the only one that came back. So for what it's worth, for anybody that actually runs across this, there there's a lot. Society is just imploding right now. You look at what's going on. California just passed a thing to lessen the penalties for people that have sex with children. It's like Sodom and Gomorrah got nothing on what we've got happening these days. The race to depravity is just unbelievable, and people are forsaking God and faith in record numbers. And there's a correlation between that and what we're seeing with the depravity in society. God is good. There's, prayer works. You don't get everything you pray for. He's not a genie, but I've had significant answer to prayer. And, my exposure to being dead and, what I brought back with me. Um, yeah, it's faith affirming. And it's easy to die, right? Like, you're gone. That was it. And it's weird to know how easy that is. That line is to cross. What's going to happen in judgment after death? I can't say. Obviously, we don't know. There's a lot that we don't know, and the fact that people argue about things like the Trinity versus non-Trinitarian, and some of these labels. How do we profess to understand the nature of an infinite being in our arrogance? And this is something that always perplexes me. But be careful, be aware. Um, there's nothing wrong with being kind. At the end of your life, if it turns out that there's nothing, which I, having been there, there's not nothing after you die. Um, it won't have hurt you to have been a kind person that did things for others through the course of your life. Um, Irregardless of what happens at the end, that will never have been a problem. So, maybe let's all think about that a little bit. I combined a lot of things in here. I didn't meander as long as I thought I would, so that's not too bad. We'll see if anybody watches it. I'll pay attention to the comments. If you're a jerk, I'll probably delete the comment. But if you want to engage in conversation, I'm happy to. And I like to learn things. I hope you like to learn things too.